Well, welcome back to week 5. What, Mr. Wilson? What are you talking about week 5? What happened to week 4? Well, we took a break. I needed time to allow the students in my class, and for you, if you are following along with all of the reading as well, to kind of get into two particular pamphlets that we had, two essays that were written during this time, the latter part of the, or the first part of the 1900s. One was by Dr. Benjamin Hayes, and the other one was written by Carl Pearson, both looking at the idea of natural selection and social Darwinism and how they sort of influence or should influence national life. And I didn't want to get going so fast that we couldn't get into it. So that we took a week off. Now we're back, week 5, and we're looking at this time types of new imperialism. We've talked a little bit about the first two that we're going to talk about, but the second two, you probably are not very familiar with those, and I want to get into that a little bit as well. So without further ado, let's get into part 1. So the 4 that we're going to talk about, the first two, as I said, you are probably very familiar with it. It's national imperialism and then imperialism for free trade. Those two we're going to talk about in part 1. And then in part 2, we're going to look at liberal imperialism as well as imperial partnerships, because those are really a new twist on this idea of imperialism globally as we move into the 1900s. First one up is national imperialism. This is the one that looks to the nation, to the identity, to the protection of the nation. That's this one. It's an old concept, but has some new twists as we move into the 1880s and 1890s. The first one, the first characteristic that's new is that it is sort of governed by a superiority of race or nation. This one we talked a little bit in previous videos, the idea that certain races had the right, had the evolutionary advancement to dominate, take control of, or do something with those that were inferior in race. And of course, since this is happening in Europe, the white man is the one who's on top. The European white man is the guy that is making all the rules, so to speak. And defining, well, which race is superior to the others, which one has evolved farther than the others. And they've done this through kind of a pseudo-science that emerged out of Lindell and Darwin and kind of got molded. They took an idea and they took it to the next step. And that definitely is part of this kind of national imperialism. Another part, which is a little bit more of an old sense, is that it's characterized by plunder. National imperialism initially was about going in and just ensuring that you have resources, have the materials and means to keep yourself up and running. But at this point in the 70s, 80s, and 90s of the 19th century, we're looking at really just robbing, leeching everything you possibly can, or everything these countries could do, out of these different areas of the globe. One area was in Zanzibar, Africa. Britain had control of this. It was their colony at this time, 1890s. Germany had been playing with it between Germany and Britain for a while in the 80s, but by 1890, Britain got pretty much control of it, settled it. And this was an ivory market. And you can just take a look at the picture and you can see that not only do you have the locals that are there, but you have Europeans who are part of this. They're the ones sitting on top of all those ivory tusks. If you're kind of wondering, well, what is that stuff? Those are ivory tusks that the animal has been killed in order to gain the tusks and to gain the ivory. This was that kind of plunder. Another one, as we looked at in previous videos, was King Leopold from Belgium. He sets up the very center, the heart of Africa in the Congo. He sets it up as a Congo-free state by enslaving the natives that are there, causing them to extract rubber and other goods that are very common and in abundance in this area. And he's getting rich by it. He's just making bank. That is another kind of plunder. And you can look at these. We talked about how he would abuse the natives if they didn't meet certain quotas. He would cut off their hands. He would abuse them in many, many different ways just to get the plunder. Another one took place a little bit later. This was in 1904. This was the Herero and Nama genocide. It took place in southwest Africa. This was a German colony, had been since the 70s and 80s of the 1800s. Interestingly enough, Hermann Goering, who was like Adolf Hitler's #1 right-hand man kind of deal, his father was sort of the governor over this colony earlier. When he left and another governor came in to control it, that's when these genocides happened. And you can see just by looking at it, it was horrible. They just massacred the people to get what they wanted out of that colony. The other issue, the other kind of new sort of characteristic of national imperialism as we move towards the 20th century is this idea of settled colonialism. This would be new shifts and migration to places like Australia, New Zealand, places in Canada, where people from Europe went to go settle. They didn't want to go there to plunder or pull things out. They wanted to go there because they wanted to take advantage of the opportunity, the new land, the new world, so to speak, even though it was places like Australia and Canada. And that was another newness. It wasn't just go there, serve, extract what you can and get back and live in luxury in Europe. It was stay there, settle, grow. And that was kind of a new aspect of national imperialism. The other kind of imperialism is this imperialism of free trade. This is an imperialism that is really not seeking to expand. They don't want more territory. They just want good contacts, good networks, good avenues, and free open trade between different regions of the globe. They don't really need they don't feel a need to set up a whole government. British don't have to go in and set up this whole government with all of their people and their military. It's really a kind of business contract. We'll work with you, you work with us, and as long as that works, everything's fine. It's very opportunistic. Something pops up, gold is discovered somewhere, boom, you just jump on it and you try to set up some sort of agreement to get what you can there. It's very reactionary. Something changes, there's a famine, there's something that's going on, there's a new market, there's a new threat into that region. Then the people who are part of this free trade see it as you're blocking my markets, you're blocking my ability to exchange goods, you're damaging and infringing upon my commerce. And so they would then react to it and make laws or do whatever they had to do in order to react. And that's another type of imperialism that sort of emerges and develops during this time. But it really is, really are these last two, the imperial or liberal imperialism as well as imperial partnership. These are the two that really bring a new spin on the idea of imperialism and one nation's, one mother country's purpose, so to speak, in other lands around the world. And that's what we're going to look at next. So come back real soon.